In this video, I'm going to give two methods on how to repair an I-cord. The first is if you're knitting along and you need to rip your work out and place the I-cord stitches back on your needle. The second will be is if you actually have an error in your I-cord and you need to drop down to fix it. So for this first method, I've just knit up a little swatch. It's just a little triangular shaped two-color stripe swatch with an I-cord at each edge, and the method will work the same for either end. So I'm just going to drop those 3 stitches off the edge as if I've had to undo my work. I've picked up all of these stitches and now have to put these back on my needle. Oftentimes knitters will put this back on in this order so that the I-cord appears like it's continuous. However, this is actually the reverse order. That actually twists your stitches. So when you go to continue your work, you're going to end up with a twist in your I-cord. So what you're looking for when you pick those stitches back up, I'm going to drop those off again, is you want to be able to see the 3 purl bumps on the inside of your I-cord. So you'll actually place them back on the needle in what feels like the wrong orientation, because this is where you dropped your yarn to slip those final 3 stitches, and you can see the purl bumps, whereas down here you can't. But actually that is the correct order so that you can see the purl bumps when the wrong side of the work is facing you. Now, when you go back to the right side and pick up your next yarn to keep knitting, it will pull these stitches around into the tube so that you no longer see the purl bumps on the inside. So the second method for repairing an I-cord is if you have an error in the I-cord several rows down, but you don't want to undo all of your work. I don't know how this would happen, but I'm trying to give an example. If you accidentally had a purl stitch in your column of knitting in your I-cord and you want to fix it, the first step to fixing it is to identify which column of stitches that your purl bump is in. So this would be sort of the 3rd column, the 3rd stitch in. The purl bump is in the 2nd column because the 1st column is the one that wraps around the outside of your work. So because it's in the 2nd column, rather than dropping down all 3 rows of the I-cord, what we're going to do is drop off this 1st stitch because it's not in the 1st column, and I'm just going to place it on a locking marker. And next we're going to drop down to that offending stitch, so it looks like it's a gray stitch. So I'm going to pull this down. So undoing an I-cord takes a little bit more effort. You kind of have to pull it, and I think it's because there's not a lot of pressure on an I-cord because we're pulling the work from behind by three stitches. So I do have to work a little bit to get down to that offending stitch, but here we go. So grab a fix-it tool or a little crochet hook. This is just a little bit smaller than the needle I'm working on. I'm working on a US 8 or a 5mm needle versus a 3.75mm crochet hook, or a fix-it tool is fine. So we're just going to get that gray stitch on the hook because that's the one that was done wrong. And what we're going to do is pick up our stitches just like we would if we were picking up dropped column of stitches in stockinette. So we're going to go under the next bar up and pull it through, then the next bar up and pull it through, and you're going to do this all the way up to, whoops, it looks like I lost my 3rd stitch of my I-cord there. Get that back on the needle and continue to pick up your bars, alternating in this case because it's striped, until you get to that top one that's attached to your last stitch on the I-cord. Pull it through, place it on the needle. And the nice thing about having this on the stitch holder is if the stitches get pulled, you can pull that back out and place it back on your needle. So now your I-cord is back in working order in the correct orientation with no more bumps in it. So there you go. I hope you found that helpful, and happy knitting.